All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Thursday, everybody. Hope all of you guys are having a great week. We had an awesome night of hoops on Wednesday night in the NBA. We're going to be covering 3 games from last night. The Phoenix Suns and Devin Booker's return beat up a really good Minnesota Timberwolves team. Lots of interesting stuff to get to in that game. The Boston Celtics, without Kristaps, Porzingis, or Jaylen Brown, went into Philly and handled the Sixers. And then last but not least, a fun game between the Atlanta Hawks and the New York Knicks that we'll be covering from the perspective of both teams. And then I have 7 mailbag questions for the end of the show as well. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to our brand new YouTube channel. It would mean a lot to me if you guys took a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget about our podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts, under Hoops Tonight. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT. I've seen a lot of people talking about wanting to see clips on the show. Obviously, we can't do that just given some of the parameters surrounding doing a show on YouTube, especially with this company. After the Super Bowl, we might try to experiment with some stuff when we have some better staffing. But right now, it's just literally not on the table for us. And I want to try to give you guys better visual representations of what we talk about on this show. And so I'm just trying to be way more deliberate about clipping stuff when I'm doing my film sessions. And I did I'm trying to thread them together. So when I cover a game, you'll see a specific thread of tweets with just clips from that game. And then I'm trying to grab specific schematic things that I notice or specific individual skill set things that I notice, and I'm adding them into that thread. And so I have a thread for all 3 of those games. There's probably like 60 clips on my Twitter feed from this morning's film session. So I'm trying to help you guys out as best as I can on that front. And for right now, at this moment in time, that's the best I can do. So I hope that you guys will head over there and check that out. And I promise in the long run, we'll continue to try to improve that experience as best as we can with the tools that we have available. But for right now, go to Twitter. That's a good place to find the film content. And last but not least, keep dropping mailbag questions in the YouTube comments so we can hit them as we get deeper into the season. All right, let's talk some basketball. So I thought this Suns game against the Wolves, obviously we're talking about Devin Booker and everything that this team is capable of offensively, and we are going to talk about that. But it was the defense that stood out to me once again. Frank Vogel's done an excellent job with this team, getting them to commit to containing the ball at the point of attack, chasing over the top of screens, rotating and helping out of double teams and 3-on-2s, and when they have to send a third defender over and pick and roll. Specifically, their rotations were so sharp to me in this particular game. I clipped like 4 or 5 different examples of the Suns, because early in the game, Karl Towns was the one guy for the Timberwolves that was giving them problems, attacking smaller defensive players and even bullying some of the bigger players on the Suns as well. And so they kind of had to start sending harder help and double teams at Cat. And they just did a really nice job rotating out of it. There was a specific play that I wanted to shout out, because some of them were really clean, like double teams, like the windshield wiper rotation where everyone's on a string, and then when the ball gets kicked out, they windshield wiper back and the advantage is gone. We'd see examples like that. But there was a specific crazy play where I'm trying to remember what exactly got them in rotation. I think it was just a standard pick and roll, but they ended up getting in this chaotic, like kind of chasing around situation. And Yuta Watanabe closes out at the same player that Kevin Durant does. And when he realizes that, he runs to the next guy, realizes he's already covered, and he just keeps running. And so for most of the possession, it looks like he's kind of lost, right? But he's playing hard and he's sprinting hard. And so he just keeps looking for somebody, and he eventually finds Kyle Anderson in the right corner unguarded, and he chases Kyle Anderson off of the 3-point line. Kyle drives baseline. He throws a pass too low to Rudy Gobert. It's a kick ball violation. The Suns are going the other way. And again, there's a mix of 2 different elements there, and you got to have both to be good in defensive rotation. You got to be on a string, meaning like from the standpoint of communication and everyone talking their way through rotations and knowing where to go, but also all guys being on the same page so that you can get those windshield wiper rotations. But the second half of it is just simple effort. A lot of those plays are chaotic, and for as many of those plays that you can kind of windshield wiper in and out of, there are also a bunch of plays where you can't, and it ends up being more of like a chaotic, like kind of improvisational type of defensive rotation. And you can make up for that by having length and playing hard. And you don't want Nabi 6'9", long arms, can make up a play like that when he's kind of lost just by playing hard. Then at the point of attack, they've got everybody competing. Obviously, Josh Okogie and Jordan Goodwin are doing really nice work there. Eric Gordon's doing really nice work there. But they're even getting committed efforts from the other guards as well, and like Grayson Allen and Devin Booker as well. The last guy I wanted to shout out in their defense is Kevin Durant. if we remember back in 2017, he kind of experienced his own individual defensive ceiling as a low man. They were using him as a help defender in pick and roll, where they'd have Draymond Green, being more aggressive in pick and roll coverages at the level, and then allow, or not necessarily at the level, but depending on the coverage, he'd be more aggressive on the ball handler, knowing that Kevin Durant guarding the low man could do a good job of kind of, if the kick out pass went to the corner, recovering and getting a good contest, but also bothering shots at the rim. There's a play in this game where I think it was Conley or Ant Edwards, I can't remember who it was, they got 2 to the ball. And so as a result, you got Rudy Gobert just barreling down towards the rim unguarded, but Kevin Durant's the low man, and he just meets Rudy Gobert at the top when he tries to dunk it and blocks him. Like, how many low men can realistically stop a athletic center that's barreling downhill going to the rim? Like, he's kind of uniquely equipped in that sense. There was another play, again, I mentioned earlier, where Karl Towns was having a lot of success beating some of the smaller Phoenix Suns players in isolation, right? And there was a play where Cat gets one of the Phoenix Suns guards on a switch, and he's at the top of the key, right? And so Kevin Durant offers like really strong nail help from the left-hand side, so the left-hand side of the ball handler, and to Cat's left, right? And he's in that position where he's kind of sagging down right at the elbow where he can be there, but at the same time he's got the length to recover out to the shooter. And on the backside, I think it was Nickeil Alexander-Walker, but someone cuts along the baseline out of the left side corner, and Cat goes to throw the pass to the open cutter who actually beat his man on the backdoor cut, but KD's so damn long and he's got his arms kind of out like this that Cat has to throw the pass high to get it over KD, and it ends up going out of bounds. And so again, like KD kind of being the supreme, backline length and rim help type of player, anchored by really solid defensive rotations and commitment at the point of attack, has allowed a team that has no rim protection aside from Kevin Durant to be a solid defensive team. They're 15th in defensive rating so far to this point in the season. They're also 7th in rebounding. And I think, again, commitment from the players, but also I want to shout out Frank Vogel. I think he's one of the smartest defensive coaches in the league. He breeds these, he preaches these types of habits into a basketball team. And you're seeing those dividends rewarding the Suns today in this particular season to this point. And like, this is going to be a consistent theme throughout today's show because, we're going to talk about like the Atlanta Hawks, for instance, as a team that does not have these habits instilled. We're going to talk about the New York Knicks as a team that does have these habits instilled. And like, again, I talk a lot about the regular season as essentially like an opportunity to build your basketball character so that when you end up in a really tough situation, you're going to fall back on that basketball character. And so those habits really, really matter for that reason. And I think defensive rating is just one of many. Rebounding is a big part of it. Defensive rating, those are important like metrics for us to watch as basically just vague indicators of a team's overall commitment, especially when we know their personnel. Like, we're not expecting this Phoenix Suns team to be a top 5 defense. They simply do not have the personnel. You're not going to without a top tier rim protector. And so in that situation, like 15th in defense is a huge win for this particular team. And if they linger around that area, they have a real chance to win the title. Combining all those things together, the solid rotations, the solid point of attack defense, Kevin Durant operating in help, did a good job of kind of baiting Minnesota into their worst tendencies. Anthony Edwards is starting to progress a lot this year in terms of his playmaking, but this was a really bad Anthony Edwards game, and a big part of it was they baited him into taking bad shots. And, that kind of like trickled down, and a lot of guys were taking some forced shots, and Minnesota just didn't really play a very good basketball game. We'll talk about them in a minute. On the other end of the floor, Devin Booker and Kevin Durant just completely cooked Rudy Gobert. First couple possessions of the game, they ran Spain pick and roll. Now, Spain pick and roll is essentially just a pick and roll where you have a shooter from underneath the basket relocate to the top of the key. And sometimes that shooter will back screen for the roll man. Sometimes the roll man will try to run into the shooter's man to try to get the three. But in this particular case, Rudy Gobert, because he knew that back screen was coming, was kind of looking behind him and constantly worried about where Grayson Allen was. And so as a result, the first possession they run it, Mike Conley, who's guarding Grayson Allen, ends up stepping up on Devin Booker. Grayson Allen pops the three-point line wide open. He knocks down the three. Next time they run it, Rudy Gobert's looking behind him, waiting for that back screen from Grayson Allen. Doesn't come, but at the same time, Devin Booker's coming off the ball screen completely wide open at the top of the key and knocking down a three-point shot. So in a weird way, the Spain pick and roll was a good way to kind of distract Rudy Gobert away from being up at the level and get him worried about where Grayson Allen was. From there, another thing that I really liked that they did with Kevin Durant in particular, again, these are ways to bait Rudy Gobert into dropping further back. So they ran an action, it was, I believe, with Eric Gordon. It was either Eric Gordon or Jordan Goodwin, but they had Kevin Durant set the screen. Kevin Durant's on the right wing, and his man's actually trying to deny the catch. And so as he's standing there, KD just walks in and sets a screen. And so what Rudy Gobert's thinking in that case is, I don't have to worry about being up at the level because Gordon or Koji or Goodwin or whoever these other off-ball players aren't knockdown pull-up shooters. Like he wants to be up at the level versus Booker and versus KD, but for everyone else, he wants to be back in the paint, right? And so what they do is they use KD as a screener, but then they quickly came over and set another flare screen with a different player on KD, who then popped to the three-point line. By the time Gobert noticed it, he was too far back into the paint, and so KD got a wide open three from it. Now on the Devin Booker actions, especially in the single pick and rolls, they started to bring Gobert up higher to the screen, and Booker was able to consistently beat Gobert off the dribble and get all the way to the rim for layups. He challenged him at the rim a few times in this game and was getting there and getting baskets. So again, like that to me is what makes this team so difficult to guard, is they are going to take traditional pick and roll defenses and barbecue them for the most part. And they're going to be a team that is, especially when they have Bradley Beal in the equation and it gets that much harder to throw significant amounts of defensive help at those two guys. Again, this is like essentially an upgraded version of what we saw last year. Last year, you were able to kind of throw the kitchen sink at KD and Devin Booker. They missed enough pull-up jump shots, and when they passed out of those actions, the firepower around them wasn't enough. That firepower has been upgraded. Nurkic is a better offensive player than DeAndre Ayton. Grayson Allen and Bradley Beal are better offensive players than the guys that were flanking him. Even Eric Gordon, a better offensive player than the guys that were flanking them in that series last year. There's just more talent. And so again, it still remains to be seen if Kevin Durant and Devin Booker can hit enough pull-up jump shots and make enough reads as the coverages get more aggressive in the playoffs. But they do have a better chance this year simply because they are a better team overall. And then they were hitting their shots today. 1.57 points per spot up possession. Jordan Goodwin and Josh Okogie went 4 for 4 from three. Obviously, that's uncharacteristic hot shooting, but at the same time, like, Beal's going to be in there as well. So, like, there is going to be more firepower, and I expect the Suns to hit shots. That's not going to be the issue. The question is, can they defend as well as they have to this point in the season? And I think that's what makes the Frank Vogel coaching decision, the decision to go with Vogel, like such, in my opinion, a very smart strategic move from the Suns front office, because essentially what you're saying is like, KD and Devin Booker and Bradley Beal, they'll figure the offense out. That's not an issue. They're too smart. There's too much talent on the floor. But like, if we can get a coach that's just going to preach and harp on the same defensive principles and rotations and all that kind of stuff and basically build those good habits, then this team can kind of do their version of what Denver did last year, which is be good enough defensively with the personnel that you have. And I would even argue that they're capable of going up a level defensively from where they've been to this point in the season. As far as the Minnesota Timberwolves go, bad shot selection screamed off the screen early in this game. They kind of, sometimes you go in and you play a bad game against a really good team and you look bad. And I think this is the kind of thing that happens a lot more frequently in the NBA than people realize. Literally the Sixers playing great basketball, but they play a bad night against the Pacers and they get their ass kicked, right? Like the Bucks have had that happen to them a couple times this year. Like the NBA is an unforgiving place these days. And, with all that talent, you don't bring it on any given night. You can get hit in the mouth pretty quickly. Their point of attack defense didn't look as sharp as it usually is. Like you're watching possessions where like Anthony Edwards is at the top of like 40 feet away from the basket and he's just getting toasted off the dribble by Eric Gordon at his age. And you're like, and I like Eric Gordon, good player, but if Anthony Edwards is sitting in the stance and really guarding, he's not getting beat off the dribble by Eric Gordon. Nickeil Alexander-Walker had a play where he was on the left wing and he's guarding Grayson Allen, and Grayson Allen just hits him with the dribble move and beats him to the basket for an easy layup. And it's like, hey, like Nickeil Alexander-Walker is an excellent point of attack defender. He's capable of containing that matchup. Rudy Gobert in particular, I didn't think his instincts were very sharp. I mentioned earlier how the Suns were able to kind of bait him into deeper drops and punish him for that. There was another play where Devin Booker got a layup where Devin Booker's on the left wing, the screen's coming to his right hand, and he's getting set to come off the screen, and Rudy Gobert set up his drop as if he was going to reject the screen. And so when Devin Booker went off the screen, he just had an easy angle to go all the way to the rim and make that layup. And again, for those of you guys who are listening, most of the plays I'm referencing, I've clipped out and are in the respective threads on my Twitter feed at _JasonLT. But again, like, I'm not going to dwell too much on the Wolves. They've played great basketball all season long. They played a bad game of basketball against a really good team and got their ass kicked, which is something that happens in the NBA. In the NBA, the game can change in an instant, but no matter how the action unfolds, DraftKings Sportsbook has your back. This week, new customers can score $150 instantly in bonus bets just for betting $5 on basketball. Win or lose, you get an instant dub. They even have great same-game parlays. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code HOOPS. That's HOOPS. New customers can get $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on basketball, only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code HOOPS. The crown is yours. All right, moving on to Celtics-Sixers. This team kind of has Philly's number. Boston's won 4 of their last 6 regular season games against the Sixers, as well as the playoff series last year. In this particular game, we have got guys out of the lineup like Kristaps, Porzingis, and Jaylen Brown missed this game, and yet they kind of just manhandled the Sixers throughout. Same stuff you are used to seeing in this particular matchup. Like Al Horford just does a really good job guarding Joel Embiid. Like I heard a stat in the broadcast that only Clint Capella has guarded Joel Embiid for more minutes than Al Horford has in his career. And I talk about this concept a lot. I've talked about it surrounding James Harden, the idea of like, if I got to, let's say that I'm the guy who has the basketball and you have to guard me once, my chances of scoring are at a certain level. If you have to guard me 5 times, my points per possession might drop a little bit. If you have to guard me 20 times, my points per possession might drop a bit. The bigger that number gets, as you get more reps, you get to pick up on my tendencies. You understand my body language better. You see my go-to moves. Like, you understand, like, you'll pick up little cues like, oh, when he does that, he's almost always going to spin back over his right shoulder. And like even little things like Joel Embiid draws a ton of fouls by getting defenders to hit his arms as he's going up into his shooting motion, right? And Al Horford is just so tuned in to that kind of grifty bullshit from Embiid that he actually knows where the shooting pocket is every single time. And so Embiid will spin into some right shoulder fade and he'll like know the ball is going to be over here and he'll smack the ball away over here and knock it away as he's going up. Whereas, other defensive players in the league will end up raking him across the arms and committing fouls. And, Joel Embiid's really good and he's still going to make shots against him, but there's no doubt that Horford makes it harder on him. And then on the other end of the floor, he consistently punishes Embiid by doing 2 things. He sets really good screens for Boston's ball handlers, which always punishes Embiid, who likes to sit further back in his drop coverage, right? Like, and we're going to talk a little bit more about Embiid defensively here in a minute, but this is the kind of thing that Embiid can struggle with. Like when he can sit back by the basket and play goaltender, he can be one of the most dominant defensive players in the league. But as soon as teams can really spread him out and test his, ability to cover ground, that is where he can start to become a flawed defensive player. And Boston in particular is consistently given Embiid issues in those ways. And then not just setting the good screens to get those guys open jumpers, like where you'll see Embiid back at the foul line while Horford setting some screen for Tatum 25 feet from the rim, who's walking into a 23-footer and knocking it down easily, uncontested. But even beyond that, it's the picking and popping. And like last night, he just had that jump shot going and time again punished Embiid for helping elsewhere on the floor. And that ended up being, one of the many ways that they gave the Philly defense issues in this particular game. And then, Jayson Tatum, it's kind of the combination of Al Horford and Tatum. Tatum's always given Embiid issues because, we remember in Game 7 last year was a similar type of thing where Tatum just absolutely cooked the Sixers in pick and roll by basically beating Embiid in a deep drop, then eventually forcing switches and hitting jumpers in his face. And they didn't quite get to the scoring on him in ISO element in this particular game just because Philly never really went to hard switches against him, against Tatum. But we've seen him do that as well. And this particular matchup is just that this team is just good at getting Embiid into precarious defensive positions and getting easy baskets. We had a mailbag question the other day talking about the Celtics and their depth surrounding, whether or not the bench was good enough. And one of the things I said is when you have 6 high-level starters in the lineup, you can always just stagger different things and find lineups that work. And I thought this was an interesting example of how the talent of this team does create, successful opportunities for their role players. Like Kristaps Porzingis is out, you're just sliding in another starting NBA center into that spot, right? Jaylen Brown is out. You're bringing Sam Hauser in there, but whether it's Svi Mykhailiuk, whether it's Peyton Pritchard, these are good basketball players, and they're not playing in a role that they can't achieve. They're not being asked to do things that they're incapable of doing, right? It's not like you're saying, "Hey, Sam Hauser, go guard Tyrese Maxey." No, they have Drew Holiday still healthy and ready to play. Derek White still healthy and ready to play. Jayson Tatum still healthy and ready to play. Those are 3 outstanding perimeter defenders. So you're not asking them to guard anybody that they can't guard. You're not asking them to consistently create shots against a set defense. You're asking them to play classic role player basketball. Drive and kick when you have an opportunity, knock down open threes when you have an opportunity, do your job and help in recover situations, run your lanes in transition. If you can do that, you can succeed. And again, these are good players. Hauser's been he's been an absolute flamethrower as of late, knocking down his 3-point shot. Peyton Pritchard's been in a little bit of slump, but he made a couple shots in this game. Svi Mykhailiuk, I thought, kind of got caught up in that wave of Celtics 3-point shooting and made a couple big ones himself. These are good basketball players, and they're going to be able to step in and succeed when they're surrounded by great basketball players, even when that's the advantage of having 6 great basketball players, is you just have the ability to build a functional basketball team night in and night out regardless. The one thing that worries me again with this team is just overall center depth. If Porzingis and Horford go down, I'm not sure if that's something they can handle. Jayson Tatum's back down game. So I thought this was an interesting example. There's a huge play at the end of this game where I think it was 105-100 if I remember correctly, and Jayson Tatum posted up DeAnthony Melton and pump faked on a right shoulder fade, got DeAnthony Melton to leave his shoes essentially, and then he drew the foul, went to the free throw line and made both. And again, there's a little bit of a chess match that sets that up, right? And Tatum in general has been using the back down game a lot more. He's still up over 4 post-ups a game, which is more than double than he did last year. And there's an early possession in this game where he posted up Tobias Harris and backed him down and made a right shoulder fade, which, by the way, Tobias Harris is 230 pounds, and Tatum just backed him down easy to get to a spot close to the basket so he could make that little right shoulder fade. Then he actually missed a right shoulder fade against DeAnthony Melton 2 possessions before the one where he drew the foul. And what was interesting about it is he backed him down, got a really good look, but he missed it. And then he used that and DeAnthony Melton contesting that shot to bait him and took the exact same shot, this time from the opposite block, and DeAnthony Melton left his shoes, and that's how he was able to draw the foul. And those are little things that he'll get even better at over the course of the season as he leans into this post-up attack even further. And then lastly, I wanted to shout out Drew Holiday. He dominated this game early on. The Celtics went up 39-22, and then the Sixers went on this crazy run to get it back up. I think they went up by 5 in the early second quarter or third quarter, and then the Celtics just basically took over the game again from there. But he dominated the game earlier. He was attacking matchups in the post. He can attack the smaller Sixers guards. He was getting a lot of deflections and forcing turnovers. The Sixers in general were a little lackadaisical, and he was capitalizing on that. On the Sixers front, they're just not playing very good basketball at the moment, particularly on the defensive end of the floor. They've now lost 2 in a row, but their defensive issues actually started in the first Indiana game. And we talked about this yesterday, but I think it comes down to 2 particular things. One is the defensive limitations of Embiid when he's going against really good pick and roll shot creators that are also surrounded by spacing. And now again, in one thing I'll say in Embiid's defense, that's the hardest thing to guard, right? The hardest thing to guard in the NBA is a really good pick and roll shot creator surrounded by lots of offensive skill that can make you pay for sending help, right? So again, it's not easy, but that's the difference between the guys at the very top of the league and wherever Embiid is, which is, in my opinion, a second, third, somewhere else in one of the lower tiers of the good defensive players in the league. Embiid's a good defensive player, but he's not in the same tier as the top guys, in large part because once you actually start to space him out, you can actually kind of slice and dice the Sixers in a lot of ways. And we talked about how Tyrese Haliburton in his pull-up three-point shooting was kind of causing problems pulling Embiid up to the level of the screen. And then they were picking apart the low man by cutting on the backdoor with Obi Toppin, right? In this particular game, it's the same type of thing. Like Embiid wants to drop back, but he can't against Tatum in particular, but also against Derek White. Like he can't. And then, on the when he's sitting, when he comes up to the level, then they start to have issues in rotation. And again, the Sixers to start the year were excellent defensively at the point of attack and in rotation. But in the last 3 games in particular, they're just not doing a very good job. I put a bunch of clips in that thread demonstrating examples where the Sixers just weren't communicating in rotation. Like there'll be a play where like Tobias Harris is guarding a shooter on the right wing. He's facing the right, so I guess the left wing if you're the offensive player. And like Tyrese Maxey is, coming out of a hedge and recover situation, and he's just sprinting to a guy who's already covered, which then causes another panic rotation from another guy, which leaves another dude open, and like kind of the exact opposite of the thing I was talking about with the Phoenix Suns, where just guys aren't on a string, which is like again, you make up for that by communicating and then establishing habitual rotations to the point where like everyone is just so locked in and everyone is so communicating and everyone's so bought in from an effort standpoint that the rotations become effective and you can start to recover out of situations like that. But right now they're just not playing very good help and recover defense. And then lastly, the unnecessary over aggressiveness. Like, it's one thing to offer a little bit of a high show to make a pull-up jump shot harder, but they'll outright double team guys for no reason. Like there was a late possession in this game where they straight up double teamed Derek White in a ball screen up on the right wing, and it's like, yeah, like, do you want to let him walk into an easy pull-up jump shot with no contest? No, but like at the same time, I don't think you need to blitz him and get the ball out of his hands. And I can't remember exactly what happened on the Derek White blitz play, but they ended up getting an easy shot out of it. I think it ended up being Sam Hauser cut to the basket, which pulled Embiid in, which then was the skip pass to Al Horford, and he made the shot. And yeah, that was the play, because everyone after the game was like, because Al Horford blew a kiss at Joel Embiid when he made the shot, and it's like, it's not Embiid's fault. I mean, it's Nick Nurse's fault because he sent a double team at Derek White, and as a result, Sam Hauser was wide open on the cut, and Al Horford, ended up getting wide open because Embiid had to leave him, right? But like there was another play where Patrick Beverley and Marcus Morris just randomly double teamed. I don't even remember who it was. I think it was like Drew Holiday or somebody in the left corner in a transition possession. It was like swing, wide open shot, and you're like, why are you double teaming him right there? Like it just doesn't make any sense. But now, for those of you guys who remember my coverage of the Raptors over the last couple of years, that's kind of Nick Nurse's thing. He's a super aggressive defensive coach. And now, in my opinion, there's a time and a place for that. But if you are going to do that all the time, you need to rotate well out of it. And right now, the Sixers just aren't. That's going to exacerbate that situation every single time. They have a 125 defensive rating in their last 3 games. Not good. Now, big picture, what does that mean? Sometimes teams just play bad basketball. That's what I said about the Lakers earlier in the season. They're still playing bad basketball. But like, again, sometimes teams play bad basketball. These are the same groups of guys that were defending at a higher level to start the season. Is there a certain ceiling to what the Sixers are capable of? Sure, but none of us are picking the Sixers to win the Eastern Conference, right? So like, at least not unless they make some sort of massive trade. So again, like within the context of the regular season, they're fine. They're just playing bad basketball right now. The other thing I noticed in this game, and some of it is just personnel related, but the Celtics had a lot of success doubling and recovering out from Joel Embiid. Similar type of thing that we were talking about in terms of being on a string and rotating out of it. But the Sixers are a pretty easy team to rotate against because they don't have a lot of ball handling outside of their starters. So like Tobias Harris, Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid, DeAnthony Melton. Those are all really versatile offensive players that can dribble, shoot, and pass. And that kind of makes it so they can play drive and kick basketball. But the rest of the roster are all guys that are not great at that. Like Robert Covington, who had a good game in this game. He's a good offensive rebounder, cutting to the basket well. Marcus Morris, at one point in time was a guy who could do this pretty well, but right now he's a lot older and a lot slower. Paul Reed, definitely not a high-level dribble, shoot, pass guy. Patrick Beverley, like a legit ball stopper. Like he's incapable of doing anything after he catches the basketball until after he's pump faked and done a jab step. Like it's like, I just remember that from when I covered him with the Lakers. It's like catching the corner, pump fake, jab step, and then maybe he'll do something, right? And then Jaden Springer was really exciting, young point of attack defender, had some good possessions on Jayson Tatum, ripped him clean, took him to the basket, was a victim of a bullshit call on Derek White late in the game where he just slid his feet, took contact in the chest, and got called for a foul. But again, not a guy who's a top tier, dribble shoot pass guy. So one of the things that'll happen is like when they get away from their starters, like there was a lineup in the third quarter that was like, I want to say it was Joel Embiid with Robert Covington, Marcus Morris, Patrick Beverley, and I can't remember who the fifth guy was, but like they were able to rotate out of those kick out passes because it like there was a skip pass to Patrick Beverley who like couldn't do something quickly with it. Ended up in Marcus Morris's hands on the left wing, and he's slow to make a decision. And like there's too many ball stoppers. That's going to make it really hard to beat double teams. And this is a big part of the reason why I want the Sixers to eventually make some sort of all-in trade to bring in another high-level offensive player, because just one more guy, especially with Kelly Oubre eventually coming back from his injuries, one more guy like that's a guy who can dribble, shoot, and pass is going to go a long way towards making it harder for teams to throw the kitchen sink at Joel Embiid. All right, moving on to Knicks-Hawks. The Knicks are a brute force basketball team. This is a concept I've talked about a lot. And, they're a very good defensive team. They're a very good rebounding team. They're not a team that's going to run super fluid offense and play a lot of pretty offensive basketball. But they do have some good shot creators. And when those shot creators are making shots, they can be tough to beat. Again, like the Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle, them just playing at the... And it's not even, they don't even need to be amazing. They need to be like, if they can just be around that 25 points per game, around 57% true shooting, like as long as both of them are kind of consistently in that window, they're a really hard team to beat, especially with how well RJ Barrett has been playing of late and how well Emmanuel Quickley has been playing of late, right? And like, last night against the Hawks was a great example of what this team looks like against a good team on the road, because I think the Hawks are good. Against a good team on the road, when you have both of those guys cooking. Like Julius Randle got the game started early and was making his little turnaround fadeaway and his little short mid-range jump shot. There was like a stretch in the third quarter where the Knicks went on a run just because Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson made 3 consecutive contested threes while they were getting stops at the other end. And next thing you look up and the Knicks are up by 9 or whatever they were up at that point, right? And then at the end of the game, same thing. It's Julius Randle hitting a tough contested 3 over Bogdan Bogdanovic, right? It's Jalen Brunson hitting 2 massive threes, one on an offensive rebound from Mitchell Robinson, another one on a relocation off of a Julius Randle post-up where he kind of caught DeAndre Hunter not looking and relocated to the corner and made the shot. And then, this game stayed close late because Trae Young got a bunch of really... Officiating in the NBA is in a really bad spot, in my opinion. And one of my biggest pet peeves right now is the whole, like, let me just... defender's right here, I'm just going to dribble to the right, and then like when he meets me at the spot, I'm just going to throw the ball up. And then it's like they're rewarding that every single time, even in crunch time. I think it's a huge problem in the NBA. And like, if you want to be all weird and be like, oh, it's technically by the book, he wasn't in legal guarding position. If it's in the book that's a foul, the book needs to be changed. If it's not in the book, then the refs need to change the way they're officiating, because like these players are doing this because they're getting rewarded for it. And until you stop rewarding them for it, they will not stop doing it. And like, it's ugly basketball. Like Jalen Brunson, and Jalen Brunson ended this game by knocking down a legitimate pull-up jump shot, but he's not off the hook either because he does this a lot too. Trae Young's just one of the worst in the league at it. And again, I don't blame the players. I do not blame the players. Everyone's like, oh, why don't you complain about it when Austin Reaves does it? I hate it when Austin Reaves does it too. Like, at the end of the day, I don't blame any of the players. They are just competitors taking advantage of a situation that benefits them in the league. It'd be weird if they didn't do that, because you're trying to win basketball games. And as of right now, refs are giving them those calls, right? But the flip side of that is, like, I think the league would be in a better place overall if the officials stopped rewarding those calls and we didn't see that anymore, and we saw more of what Jalen Brunson did at the end of the game. And that's kind of like the juxtaposition. On one end of the floor, Trae Young just drives in and throws up some bullshit and gets 2 free throws for it. And on the other end of the floor, Jalen Brunson, against a drop coverage, knocks down a pull-up jump shot. I would much rather see that determine the outcome of games. Makes or misses on real basketball shots. than foul grifty stuff. So I'm off my soapbox, but like that's definitely something that's been bothering me as of late. But that's kind of the whole identity for this Knicks team is they play ugly basketball on the offensive end from time to time, but they've got guys that can score in brute force ways. And as long as their defense and rebounding can keep them close in games, Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson have a chance to pull them home, right? Julius Randle had 29 points in this game. He had comments after a game a few weeks back, or like a week or so ago, talking about how, hey, I had ankle surgery. Like, did you guys expect me to come into the season and be ready to go? And we talked about that early, right? Like, Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle both came into the season kind of out of shape. And Julius Randle's was clearly as a result of the ankle injury that hampered him towards the end of last season. And you can see him starting to come into form. 29 points on 50% shooting in this game. Another big giveaway for Julius Randle. He had 2 shots early in the game where, like, one of the things that Julius Randle always will do, just imagine him on the left block, dribbling with his right hand, and then he wants to kind of lean into the middle of the floor and rise up and shoot that left-handed jumper. And a lot of times he's getting hit on this arm. And, we talk a lot about lift and pull-up jump shooting. Like, a big sign for Julius Randle, like having his conditioning and his legs underneath him, is when he can power up through contact with that left arm and then rise up and knock down that left-handed jump shot, right? He hit a couple of those in this game. Julius Randle's last 5 games, 25 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists on 56% true shooting. He's been making some big plays as well. I think he had 8 assists and 1 turnover in this game, including a huge pass to Jalen Brunson relocating in the corner in crunch time. He's starting to play good basketball, and I'm really interested to see, because Jalen Brunson had 24 as well. And one of the things that Jalen Brunson was doing at a high level in this game was bringing 2 defenders to the ball, which then allowed the Knicks to start their drive and kick on the backside. And specifically guys like Immanuel Quickley. Immanuel Quickley can do some stuff on the ball and hit some big shots on the ball in this game. But Immanuel Quickley and Josh Hart in particular are both really good drive and kick players. And so they do a nice job kind of working in those 4-on-3s after Jalen Brunson brings 2 to the ball. But particularly, I'm excited to see this Knicks team for an extended stretch with a healthy Brunson and Randle, because last year they didn't defend at this level. And so if they're defending like this, like they're 5th in defense and defensive rating, they're number 1 in the league in rebounding. Like, I'm really excited to see that combined with the version of Randle and Brunson that we're seeing here in the last week or so. And then also Immanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett are both playing pretty well. I guess RJ Barrett's dealing with I think it's a migraine that has him out right now. But I'm just interested to see the Knicks at full strength and what they're capable of. In general, like, this was another example of one of those games of where you see the juxtaposition of a team that's really locked in on the details and a team that's not. We're going to talk about the Hawks in a minute, but they are just another team that's so undisciplined on the defensive end in terms of their rotations, in terms of boxing out, in terms of getting beat on back cuts and all these different things. And the Knicks are a team that just has really good habits. Like, you'll see just relentless effort every single possession from these guys. There was a play in the early 4th quarter, and it's like, shot goes up, Onyeka Okongwu just looks up for the ball, Isaiah Hartenstein crashes hard, gets an offensive rebound, right? Like, shot goes up, Jalen Johnson just looks up at the ball, Mitchell Robinson comes flying in and gets the offensive rebound. That was the one that led to the kick-out 3 to Jalen Brunson at the top of the key. That was like a huge momentum shot in the game, right? There's a huge play at the end of the game where Trae Young has Josh Hart in a box out and then just stops boxing him out. And Josh Hart, because it's habitual for him, just crashes after Trae Young releases the box out, gets the offensive rebound. Like, they are so gritty and so tough, and it is their basketball character to outwork you. And when you that just naturally creates a lot of margin for error, because, like, are Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle, RJ Barrett and Immanuel Quickley, are they as good as shot creators as the best players in the league? No, they're just not. But they don't have to be when they defend this well, when they rebound this well, when they crash the offensive glass this well, when they run in transition this well. They're doing a really good job this season scoring off of turnovers and quickly running out the other way for layups and dunks. They're just a really fun basketball team to watch. And again, like, you got to remember, I root for the Lakers. That's the team that I root for. And, like, they're a miserable team to watch because they just have the exact opposite of that basketball character. Like, they do not have, habits of making extra efforts and being focused in and locked in on the details. So a good win for the Knicks on the road over a good Hawks team. I'm excited to see what they look like when they come into full strength here soon. On the Hawks front, I really like what I'm seeing from this team offensively, and that's kind of the bummer with how bad they've been defensively. The drive and kick stuff is beautiful. Jalen Johnson has been a revelation, and again, some of this is Quinn Snyder, some of this is getting John Collins out of there. As good as John Collins is, a good basketball player, but because he's essentially offensively a big, he was one of the worst he was the worst spot-up player in the league among qualifying players last year. I want to say it was a minimum 100 spot-up reps. He was dead last in the NBA. And so he doesn't dribble, shoot, and pass well enough to kind of be in a drive and kick system. And so they kind of had to run a classic too big pick and roll system with the guy in the dunker spot, which, as we've talked about with Cleveland so much, that can be really easy to guard if you have a good rim protector playing on that back line, right? So just in general, seeing them kind of go to 4 perimeter players alongside Capella and playing real drive and kick basketball has made them more dynamic offensively. There's a specific play I want you guys to see that's in my feed that it started with pick and roll, and it was a kick out. I want to say it was Saddiq Bey in the right corner, and Saddiq Bey pump fakes and drives middle and then makes a kick out pass to Jalen Brunson on the left wing, and he knocks down a 3. And it was a good example because it was after the Trae Young, I believe, brought 2 to the ball. There was 3 passes after that. And I clipped this play. It's in the thread that you guys can find. But that's the thing that you need to do to beat elite defenses. We talk about this concept a lot on the show, but when you play a bad defense in the playoffs, you might be able to, get away with coming off a ball screen, making 1 pass, getting an open shot a lot of the time. But against the really good defenses, they're set up for that. And they're pre-rotating and they're getting into position to be able to take away the advanced level reads. And you have to really break down the defense by chipping away at it. That means chipping away, the first step is getting the defense in rotation, and then from there expanding the advantage to then finishing the play, right? And that's where having 2 additional perimeter players next to Trae Young and DeJounte Murray goes a long way. Ironically, the one guy that's been kind of a break in that chain is DeAndre Hunter. He kind of reminds me of a lot of Rui Hachimura in the sense that he's a deadly accurate mid-range pull-up shooter, and when he's making that mid-range jump shot, it's good, but he's a ball stopper, and he's not looking to keep that chain moving, and he can actually break a lot of those driving kick possessions down, whereas Saddiq Bey and Jalen Johnson are just naturals at it. And shout out to DeJounte Murray, too. He's kind of a natural at it, too. He was a really bad off-ball player last year, but he's doing a much better job this season, just kind of taking advantage of the easy opportunities he can get playing off of Trae Young, which is a natural thing that comes from continuity. And obviously, Quinn Snyder's probably come in and implemented some of that stuff as well. I wanted to shout out Jalen Johnson, 16 for 32 on catch-and-shoot jumpers this year. That comes out to 1.47 points per shot. That's outrageous. And then he's attacking closeouts really well. I clipped a couple of them in the thread, but there was one in the left corner where I think it was against Julius Randle where he pump faked and then spun off of him and got all the way to the rim for a layup. There's another one in the second half where pump fake, rip, floater in the lane. That's a shot he can get every single time because of how big and athletic he is. But he's converting spot-up possessions at 1.35 points per possession right now, which is insane. Saddiq Bey, 56% on catch-and-shoot jumpers as well. That's really good. He had a nasty tip dunk at the end of this game as well. But the defensive discipline is just so bad. The late game mistakes from Atlanta in this game were insane. There DeAndre Hunter had 2 bad ones. There was one where Julius Randle's working kind of in the middle of the floor in ISO, and Trae Young pretend I'm DeAndre Hunter, and Trae Young is my man. He was facing Randle like this and it was Jalen Brunson was behind him, is who it was. So he's guarding Jalen Brunson. He's in help, kinda. He's in position where he can help, but he's not really doing anything on Julius Randle. And he's facing Randle like this with Jalen Brunson behind him. So Jalen Brunson just runs to the corner. And then Julius Randle throws the pass and he gets a wide open 3 and he knocks it down. It's a critical play in the game. And then do you guys remember that big, I think it was a dunk, but that big cut from Julius Randle at the end of the game where you got I think it was a dunk, but where Julius Randle cut back door and got into the lane? That was DeAndre Hunter, just not keeping an eye on his man and the ball and losing his man on a back cut. That's just not sharp. And then I'd mentioned the Trae Young box out. He's literally in a box out. He's got Josh Hart pinned behind him and then just goes let's go, and just kind of meanders into the lane to go get the basketball. And Josh Hart just then runs in and gets the offensive rebound. It was like one of the more bizarre plays that I can remember seeing. And all of these ended up being critical baskets. Like the Jalen Johnson missed a box out on Mitchell Robinson, led to a critical basket. Like just the discipline and the execution of this team defensively is not there, which is disappointing because they have the potential. We've seen Atlanta have long extended stretches for like a half where they look like an excellent defensive team. So it's there. I've seen Trae Young give this type of effort even within this season. So like it's there. The personnel is there. It's just a focus in a discipline thing. And again, like I said, it's early to kind of like characterize them as that for the big picture. But at this point, we're a decent chunk into the season and they haven't shown any real commitment to trying to get better on the defensive end of the floor. All right, let's head to the mailbag. Jason, why are you so high on Austin Reaves after one great playoff run? Don't get me wrong, he projects to be a great number 3 or even number 2 in the future, but if the Lakers never made the Western Conference Finals, we would have never found out early enough how great he can be offensively. And just like Jordan Poole, he had one great playoff run, then you predicted he would struggle the following season like every young player would, but you seem to still be very high on Austin right now after only one great playoff run in his resume. Same case with Michael Porter Jr. in Denver. Really good question. I think it's a little bit different on a couple of different levels. One, Austin is a year older than Jordan, and we are now a year further into the future. Like if the Lakers play in the NBA Finals this year, Austin will be 26 years old, which is we're no longer in young guard territory there. Like when Jordan Poole was struggling last year, he was 23 years old. It's a little bit more of that in a different kind of time frame, right? Michael Porter Jr., for instance, like he was the one player below the age of 25, or I think it was either 25 or younger, or below the age of 25, I can't remember, in the finals last year. So like, again, he's a little bit older. That's a totally fair point. And I'll be really curious to see if that theory stays true. Because if Austin does really struggle in this year's playoffs, that would be an indicator of that. But hopefully what will push Austin over the edge there is him being a little bit older than Jordan Poole was in last year's playoff run. About 2 years older than Jordan Poole was in last year's playoff run. That said, his slump this year has been weird. And he's had really good moments this year. He's been excellent in crunch time in particular. And there was like a 3-game stretch earlier where he was scoring with good volume and efficiency. But he's had a lot of bad games this year. And he was bad again against the Kings last night. And, again, I'm going to say the same thing that I say, about teams, right? I said the same thing about the Sixers earlier. Like sometimes good basketball players play bad basketball. Sometimes good basketball teams play bad basketball, right? And that's kind of the way I look at it. Like Austin Reaves had 8 20-point games in the playoffs last year. So we shouldn't overreact to 8 bad regular season games. And while I think that's a really good point as it pertains to the playoffs, and I'll be really curious to see if Austin succeeds in this year's playoff run, within the scope of this regular season, I expect him to get it together and start playing better. I saw people saying things like, oh, he's higher on the scouting report. No, he's not. He's in the exact same spot on the scouting report he was last year when he was succeeding, right? Like he's playing, he was seeing similar defensive coverages that he did last year. There's been a reorientation of the offense. He's not getting his touches in the same way that he used to. D'Angelo Russell's off to a pretty good start this season offensively, at least with exception of his 3-point shooting, which he broke out of that slump earlier this week. But so his touches are a little different, and I think that's a part of it. I think he's a little bit worn down in general as well. But I'm not off of the Austin Reaves train because he was awesome after the Russ trade last year. He was awesome in the playoffs. He was awesome in FIBA. He was awesome in training camp, and then he just started to struggle when we got into the regular season. So again, it's too small of a sample size to overreact to. In the big picture, what draws me to Austin Reaves is I think he plays really well with other stars. And I think that kind of uniquely is a thing that separates him from Jordan Poole as well. Like Jordan Poole is very much like he needs to cook. He needs to kind of run the show. Whereas Austin, it's if you give him a ton of space and touches, he can do that. But at the same time, he's an excellent player within a 5-man system where he's playing off the ball. He's a great spot-up shooter. Hasn't shot the ball well this year, but he shot the ball amazingly well all year last year and in the playoffs. It's 44% from 3 in the playoffs. He's just not shooting the ball well this year. But he can shoot the ball well. He can attack closeouts well. He's a good passer. He's a connective piece in that sense. But another big piece with Austin that's kind of holding him back right now is he's not defending or rebounding well. And that's a problem because last year he was a I wouldn't say he was a good defender, but he was a plus defender. Like, he wasn't the guy. He was a slightly above average defender that was not hurting you on that end of the floor and made some big plays defensively for the Lakers last year. So, like, that piece is the more concerning piece to me. Like, the offensive piece, like, Austin's going to be fine. He's going to figure it out. Again, new system is going to disrupt a lot of people. But the defensive end and him just kind of being a little bit more, offering less resistance there, it has been, and then I don't think he's been very good in box out situations either. That's the more concerning thing. But again, that to me is just, I don't know if it's conditioning or if it's an effort thing, but I'm not worried about him eventually figuring that stuff out. But really good point about the Jordan Poole comp. And again, there's a little bit of a difference there, but I am curious to see what ends up being the result when we get into this year's playoffs. But in the big picture, like, as far as the Lakers go, I think the same thing that I've always said, in the sense that, like, it's the same guys, right? It's D'Lo, it's Austin, it's Rui, it's LeBron, it's AD. Like, they're good. I saw somebody say in the comments a few weeks back, they're like, oh, you overrate the post deadline run last year because they were playing a weak schedule and they were playing desperate to win every single game. Some of those teams were trying to lose. That's true. But they also beat the 2 seed and beat the defending champions in a playoff series. So, like, there's no such thing as a bad team that beats the 2 seed without home court advantage and then beats the defending champs without home court advantage. So, like, I'm just not going to entertain the Lakers are a bad thing, because that just literally doesn't make any sense. It flies in the face of everything we know about the game of basketball. You don't beat good teams 4 times out of 7 unless you are a better team. Like, that's just how it works. So, like, am I concerned about the Lakers in the big picture? No. I said before the year they needed to make a trade. They haven't made that trade yet. They're not going to be able to until at least January 15th, right? I think it's January 15th. And at that point, we can more appropriately evaluate what the Lakers' ceiling is. But for right now, they're playing bad basketball. And Anthony Davis is playing bad basketball. And Austin Reaves is playing bad basketball. And until those guys get it together and Jared Vanderbilt comes back, I don't think this team's going to be as good as they're capable of being in the regular season, right? Now, here's the upside. Last little kind of silver lining. What did I say before the season? I said I still think the Lakers will win a lot of regular season games. And that's the exciting part, because I think they're 500 right now, right? Like, they're 6-6. So they're sitting at 6-6 despite playing one good basketball game. They played one good basketball game against a terrible Memphis Grizzlies team. Outside of that, even their wins have been ugly. It's been like they play like shit for 3 quarters and then they lock in for 12 minutes and they get a win. So, like, they're playing like shit and they're 6-6. So, like, that to me is a strong indicator of this team being a healthy above 500 team in the big picture, because they will have stretches where they play better basketball. They'll get healthy. They'll play really good basketball. They'll get into stretches of their schedule to have some easier opponents. Like, that to me is a strong indicator of them being a good regular season team. But my opinion about the Lakers remains the same as it pertains to their playoff ceiling. Depends what they get back for D'Angelo Russell. And if they go back with D'Angelo Russell, they're going to lose to Denver or potentially somebody earlier because they're not athletic enough, particularly at the point of attack, to be able to beat the really, really, really good teams in the NBA. All right, next question. Honestly, as a Warriors fan, I don't care about the Curry injury or Green ejection or Clay's slow start. That is business as usual for me. What's new for me, however, is Podziemski's performance and how he completely changes the energy on the floor. He reminds me a lot of early rookies, Steph and Draymond, years before KD era, where they were intimidating and how their energy was contagious. And I really wish to see more of that beautiful basketball, even if they lose all of the remaining 82 games. So it's technically not even a mailbag question, but I thought this was a good opportunity for us to talk about Podziemski, because he had one of the silver linings of that shit show against Minnesota was he looked great. And, there was a couple things that really stood out to me in that game. One, very good rebounder. And this was something we saw from him coming out of college. I think he averaged 8 rebounds a game his last year in college. But specifically, he's actually a pretty big and strong player. And he plays hard. And when you combine those two things, that helps a lot. Like, I mean, you don't have to be a top tier athlete to have success in that environment. Like, we've literally seen, we've seen Josh Hart, for instance, as like a similar type of physique that has had a lot of success doing the dirty work, right? We knew coming into the season that he would have a lot of success in the Warriors system. And we saw that, right? Like, we saw him hit pull-up threes and ball screens when a defender dies on a pick. We saw him get downhill off of a dribble handoff and knock down a floater. We saw him attacking closeouts and those sorts of things. But what was really exciting was the rescue possessions. He had a couple of really nice, tough shots that he hit off the dribble against a set defense and a set defender. And I think that's a strong indicator of one of the things that Steve Kerr said in his post-game pressers. He called him like a connector. And to me, being a connector is being good at multiple things. Because like if you're only good at one thing and that thing fails you, then you struggle to impact winning in other ways. But that's what's nice with Podziemski. Is he going to average 20 points a game? Of course not. But Kerr said he is going to be in the rotation a lot. And so if he competes as hard as he can defensively and he competes on the glass the way that he did and he attacks closeouts and does the stuff in the system, then even when he's missing his tougher shots, he'll still be a connective piece that helps the team win. Right. And like I am really interested to see where the minutes come from. Because if Podziemski gets more minutes, like who's not going to get minutes? Is that going to be less Moses Moody, who's already kind of struggling to crack into the rotation? Like Corey Joseph got minutes the other day. That was weird, right? So like I'm not really sure how the rotation is going to work out at this point with Podziemski kind of getting into the rotation the way Steve Kerr said. But no matter what, that's exciting. I think in general, what you've gotten from Trayce Jackson-Davis and Brandin Podziemski this year, combined with Jonathan Kuminga and everything he can do as a matchup attacker in the post and just as an athlete and his ability to get to the foul line, you're seeing a lot of exciting stuff from the young guys. And so even if this does end up ending and turning into a rebuild at some point in the future, there's a lot of exciting stuff in the current set of young players that the franchise has. All right, next question. Hey, Jayson, I generally play big at my local gym and I want to grow some guard skills, mainly my left-handed dribble. Are there any specific drills you recommend to start laying down a good groundwork? Thanks. Great question. Again, I've hit this on the show before, but I'll hit it really quick. Again, everyone's got different stuff here. Like, for instance, a lot of people believe in two-ball handling. Like Steph Curry, who's way better ball handler than me, believes in two-ball handling. I'm not a big believer in two-ball handling because you never do that in a game. I understand it's a hand-eye coordination exercise, but for me personally, I really like to just do the same moves that I use in games, just practice them at game speed as much as possible. And again, that's just what works for me. Everyone's different, right? But I'll tell you guys about the drills that I do. So I have 4 drills that I do every single day. I'm not doing them currently because I'm injured, but I'm about to ramp back up from my Achilles injury here in a couple of weeks. And when I do, I will be doing this drill every single day. And essentially, I start half court right side. In and out crossover starting in my right hand 4 times. So in and out crossover to my left, in and out crossover to my right, in and out crossover to my left, in and out crossover to my right. I'm ending with the ball in my right hand, exploding to the rim, layup. Back to the left side, in and out crossover starting in the left hand, ending in the left hand, left-handed layup. Back to the right side, in and out crossover starting in the right hand, ending in the right hand 4 times, right? Pull up jump shot. Same thing on the left side, pull up jump shot. Then same thing in and out between the legs, okay? 4 times layup, 4 times layup, 4 times jumper, 4 times jumper. Then in and out behind the back. 4 times layup, 4 times layup, 4 times jumper, 4 times jumper. That to me hits the 4 dribble moves that I hit most commonly in games. In and out, crossover between the legs behind the back. At game speed, lots of reps, while also warming up my body, right? I'm making aggressive moves to the basket, jumping into pull-up jump shots and things like that, right? Then I go to pull-up shooting. So what I do is I roll the ball out to myself at 30 feet with my back away from my back facing the basket. So I'm facing my face is facing away from the basket. I'm going to reverse pivot with my left foot and rip through to the right. Then I'm going to hit a counter move back to the left, some kind of dribble combination. I usually mix it up. And I'm going to end up at about the high school line. And I'm going to shoot a pull-up jumper going left. Remember, when I'm going left, I want to plant that left foot last. So I'm planting right, left, elevate into the shot, right? Then spin it out to myself, right foot pivot, rip through the left, counter move back to the right, left, right, pull-up jump shot, right? I'm going to do that until I make 5 going both ways. So it's 10 total makes. Then from there, I want to shoot NBA length pull-up threes. So I'm starting at 30 feet, rolling the ball out to myself, left foot pivot, rip through, pull-up jumper going right. Again, left, right, takeoff. I want to take that shot at around 25 feet. Then I'm going to do the same thing going left until I make 5 going both ways. Then from there, I go into movement shooting. Same thing, roll the ball out to myself at about 25 feet, and I want to be going directly across from the basket. So if like the three-point line's like this and the basket's here, I'm going to be running this way. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll the ball out to myself, and I'm going to catch it, plant that left foot, swing that right foot around, and square up in midair to take that movement jump shot drifting to the right, and then I'm going to do the same thing going to the left. I'm going to go to the opposite side of the court, roll it out, plant right, left. And the move there is I want to act like I'm coming flying off a screen, and I need to get my feet set and elevate into a shot. So for me, the only time I ever shoot just stand still, catch and shoot jump shots is when I'm done training my high school kids. I'll set up the gun and I'll just shoot stand still, catch and shoot jump shots. But for me, I'll shoot literally like 700 of them a week because I'll do 350 twice a week, right? But I am doing a ton of every single other drill I do has ball handling mixed into it, and I'm working on pull-up shooting. And then again, with pull-up shooting, I'm always focusing on going straight up and down anyway. My goal is for my catch and shoot jump shot and for my pull-up jump shot to look the same if you were to trim off the dribbling part and you were to just watch me go up and down. That way, essentially, I'm trying to get to my muscle memory. There are certain shots where you have to drift, and you'll, like those of you guys who are scorers know what I'm talking about, where like if you're shooting left shoulder fades in the post, right shoulder fades in the post, some pull-up jump shots off the move where you have to be drifting a certain amount. But even then, I want to get so much lift that it feels like I'm going straight up and down. And usually that ends up being the difference in make or miss for me, is whether or not I get the appropriate amount of lift. But those 4 drills, again, the ball handling at the beginning, the counter move pull-up jump shot, the straight up pull-up jump shot, and the movement dribble. Those are the 4 drills I do every single day. And I feel like they do a good job of kind of checking the boxes, so to speak, of basic skill development. All right, next question. You're ducking OKC hard. Have you been? You have been talking about everybody, even Victor. Then when he plays us, it's hush mode. So this is. I just pulled this one out because it's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. I work really, really hard to cover the entire league. It's extremely difficult to do, as you guys know. And there's 30 teams, and even worse, like 20 of them are good. And like, it just takes a lot of time to cover every single team. Like, for instance, today I hit 3 games, right? I hit the Wolves Suns, I hit Sixers Celtics, and I hit Knicks-Hawks. It straight up took me like 6.5 hours to watch all those games. And to really get into watching the defensive coverages that are taking place, looking at a lot of times I'm rewatching a play 3-4 times to kind of pick up on all the little things that happened on that specific possession. And so it's difficult to do. And so what I'm trying to do in place, because I can't realistically cover the Thunder twice a week. It's not possible. But what I can do is when I do cover the Thunder, give you guys my best. And so here's the thing. Tonight, Golden State plays the Thunder. Like tomorrow, we'll talk Thunder. And I'll give it my best, and I'll make sure I give you guys a quality breakdown. But at the end of the day, like I'm not ducking your favorite team, I promise. It's just really, really hard to hit everybody. Like this week, I was able to hit the Knicks and the Pacers, right? And I was able to hit the Hawks, and I was able to get into that Minnesota Timberwolves deep dive and some of those things. But it's just really difficult for me to get to all 30 teams. And so again, if you're a fan of any specific team, and I haven't talked about your team, I promise it's not because I'm ducking them or ignoring them or I'm not aware of their success. I just don't want to give you guys bullshit analysis. I don't want to come up here and talk about your team if I haven't really watched them closely enough to give a good bit of analysis. And so I will make sure that I get to your teams eventually, especially if they're good. But at the end of the day, I hope you guys can understand that there's like a certain limitation in it's basically impossible to cover the entire league as thoroughly as everybody wants me to. And if anything, I've already got my wife and my producer beating me up about working too much. And so if anything, I'm looking for more opportunities to try to pull back, and that makes it even harder. But I just hope you guys understand that like it's nothing intentional. I'm not ignoring your team's success. It's just I'm trying to do the best I can in that respect. Last comment. You kept calling Tyrese Haliburton Tyrese Maxey. Oh, God, I was so frustrated as this was happening yesterday. I generally struggle with this kind of thing. I struggle to remember names in general. That was a pain in the ass when I worked in real estate. You guys wouldn't believe, especially when I was like doing open houses and like I'd meet someone at the door and like shake their hand and get their name. And then like 10 seconds later, I'd be like, I can't remember that dude's name. It was an absolute nightmare. But the other thing too is like when I'm recording these shows, especially these daytime ones, they're after I've been staring at a computer screen for like 6 hours. And so like I kind of get a little brain fried from time to time. And I'm really sorry, Pacers fans. I hope that wasn't too frustrating for that video, because I really did put a lot of effort into trying to give you guys a good breakdown of Tyrese Haliburton. So I apologize for butchering the names a lot. Doesn't help that they played against each other and have the same first name. Let's just put it that way. Definitely was enough to trick my brain into making a bunch of mistakes. All right, guys, that's all I have for today. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys supporting the show. We'll be back tomorrow with a breakdown probably of just the OKC Golden State game. Probably taking an easy day before we head into Friday or before we head into the weekend. As always, I appreciate you guys, and I will see you tomorrow.